Prairie Yard and Garden is a production of the University of Minnesota Morris in cooperation with Pioneer Public Television. Funding for Prairie Yard and Garden is provided in part by Heartland Motor Company, providing service for over 30 years in the heart of truck country. Heartland Motor Company, we have your best interest at heart. Farmers Mutual Telephone Company and Federated Telephone Cooperative, proud to be powering Asarum. Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien, in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org. Diamond Willow Advanced Care Assisted Living, providing custom homes with smaller settings designed especially for high care needs.
Tom's favorite season is fall, but not me. Spring is my thing. I always think that spring is our reward for having lived through another long and cold winter. I love to see the grass greening up and the trees starting to bud out too. Then when the first robin appears, I know for sure that spring has arrived. And the next thing that says spring in our yard are the tulips coming up. I'm host Mary Holm, and let's talk spring flowers on today's Prairie Yard and Garden. Many years ago, I attended a gardening event and was lucky enough to win one of the door prizes, which was a bag of red tulips. Those went right into my flower bed, and I have been enjoying them every year since. I think I started with 5 tulip bulbs, but imagine having thousands of spring bulbs and flowers to care for and grow each year. That is part of the job of Alan Branhagen at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. Welcome, Alan.
Well, thank you, Mary, for coming here on a beautiful spring day.
Tell me, how long have you been working here at the Arboretum?
I've been working here 2 years, but I got to add that I've been coming here for 41.
Oh, really? What does your job all involve?
Well, as Director of Operations, I'm in charge of horticulture and also the plant curation. We keep records on all the plants here, just like a living museum, and then all the facilities and grounds and even information technology.
What are the spring bulbs that you grow here?
Well, Mary, we grow all of them that are already here at the Arboretum, but the most beloved of them is, of course, the tulip and the most showy, and we do a spectacular display this year. Almost 90 varieties are on display. So we have everything from earlier, what they call minor bulbs, though to me they're not minor. Some of the early dwarf iris, the pushkinia, have you heard of those? The squills. Crocuses, though crocuses can be challenging because we have lots of critters here. But then we have later things like hyacinths are blooming now, and lots of narcissus or daffodils, and then of course probably the crown joy tulips, and even other weird big things like, have you heard of the crown imperial fritillaria? We have great big ones of those as well.
When do you plant all of these bulbs?
Well, of course, fall planting. All of these go in right at the end of September. Right after we take out our summer annuals, we go in with the fall bulbs.
Okay, then do you have to plant some of them earlier and some of them later? Because I think daffodils usually like to be in a little bit longer, is that correct?
That's correct. Again, for our annual display like tulips, we put them in all at once, but depending on the variety, and of course we have 1,200 acres here, we are planting throughout the fall season, depending on the variety.
How do you plant them? Like, how far apart do you space them?
Well, the best rule of thumb is you look at the width of the bulb and then you multiply that times 3, and that's what we do here to get these really nice full blocks of color. And that really works for all of them, even the little ones. To plant, just a few inches apart really gives you that better display in spring, and people really have a tendency to plant them too far apart.
Do you use different varieties with different heights too in order to get the beautiful look that we have here next to us?
That's correct. Most of our annual display are from mid-season and late-season blooming varieties. A lot of tulips, that is. The early season tulips generally are too short and are a little more challenging to combine with it. But even if you look at this bed, some of the later or earlier varieties blooming now, you have a little bit later blooming variety just in front of it, because you want to, when you're looking at something in bloom, you'd rather look through buds rather than spent flowers.
So that's a good idea, to
Yes.
plant the later varieties towards the front.
Right, towards wherever you're viewing from, correct. Yep.
Okay. And I would guess by using the different varieties that you actually get a longer season of bloom then.
That's right. With all the varieties of bulbs we have here, they're really blooming for 2 months, and there's a good 2 weeks just on these mid and late season varieties that we have in tulips. Of course, Mother Nature can always throw in a curveball with a 100-degree day, which is rare, and they last longer with cooler temperatures.
Well, and it looks like you have different types of flowers too on the tulips.
Right.
Now, is this considered like a double that we have next to us?
Yeah, this is a double late Akebono. We also have hybrid Darwin and lily flowering tulips, the ones that have the more pointed tips. We generally like to show a really good cross section. Though these designs were done by Dwayne Otto, and he really likes the doubles. And the one nice thing about the doubles also is they last longer.
When you do a planting, do you add compost to the soil at that time?
Yes, we do, though it ends up really being about every other year, and that really is the best fertilization for bulbs.
And what kind of compost do you use?
Well, we just use a locally made compost. Again, there's a lot of local recyclers that make it, and that way, you're making use of refuse.
All right, now here's a question. Do you have critters that you have to worry about after you do your planting?
Oh yes, we have several that are 4-letter words to us: vole, mole, and deer. But then we have rabbits and squirrels too. So absolutely, it is one of our largest challenges. And after we plant, we actually do put down a layer of webbing. You can use anything from chicken wire to a plastic mesh, again, so that the critters can't get into it. And then when they start to emerge in spring, we also have to use deterrent sprays like liquid fence. Actually, plant skids might be one of the best one, even blood meal, just to really deter all the things that love tulips. And of course, tulips are edible for us as well. So they're a high menu item for our wildlife that we have here.
Do you have to mulch that bulb crop after you plant it in order to get it through the winter?
Absolutely, it really helps because, as you know, we can have a snow-free winter with some really cold temperatures, and obviously people are counting on our display in spring. So yes, we use a straw mulch starting out maybe about 6 inches, though it compacts down to about 4 inches that we have on the plants through the winter, just to ensure that they stay nice and cold and come up in spring.
Since you use a straw mulch, do you have to worry about mice then?
Well, again, that netting underneath, and then we also do the other deterrents like blood meal and things, so we try to keep those at bay.
When you have thousands of bulbs here, do you have to worry about a spring frost because you can't go out and throw a blanket over them?
Well, that's right. Luckily, virtually all the spring bulbs are very, very cold tolerant, and I asked the longtime gardeners here, and we really have no issues. They start to worry, especially if they're in bloom, if the temperature drops, they worry about 24, but it really is rare. And I got to tell you, 21 years before here, I was working in Kansas City, and we call that the manic depressive climate, where they can warm up so much earlier than up here in Minnesota. And many times, yeah, the tips of the leaves and stuff would get burned by cold that would come back.
So will they come back again then after they get?
Yes, but it's just aesthetically, you still always have that little burnt edge down there. Up here again, usually when spring comes, spring is here, and we don't have such vicious cold to return.
Does it help if we're going to have a really frosty forecast for especially at night? Do you ever go in and water them a little bit, like I've heard of fruit crops that they'll do that in order to help keep them from freezing?
That's correct. We do that over at the HRC with our apple crops. Here again, the tulip flowers are frost tolerant, so they can weather that.
When the flowers are done, do you plant other things in to help hide that, or Do you go in and clip off the greens at all? I've heard that you maybe shouldn't do that.
Right. In our permanent beds where we have these planted mixed in with perennials, we do let the foliage start to yellow, and you must wait until then before you cut it off. And that way, you know, it's getting all the photosynthesis from the sun, and that's rejuvenating the bulb for next year. So don't cut off the foliage too early. Let it start to yellow, and then you're good to go with removing it.
Then do you interplant perennials in there to hide that ugly foliage then as it's dying down?
Absolutely, and you know, like daffodils are really nice companions with daylilies as an example. We have astilbes with hyacinths. I mean, yeah, pairing them up is always a good idea, so that, yeah, because the foliage can look kind of unsightly. And then these annual beds, of course, these are all completely taken out because we really use most of our tulips as just annuals, and then summer annuals go in the spot that they were in.
Do you save the bulbs at all?
These we do not. Just because we need such a glorious, consistent display, we do not save them over. We treat them as annuals.
The beds that you keep as bulbs all the time, do you have to dig up and reset them every so often in order to kind of rejuvenate them?
You know, that's a really common question. We just had Brent Heath here from Brent and Becky's Bulbs talking about that, and you know what? He never does, and we don't either. Actually, it's really, most of them multiply beautifully on their own as long as you're adding that compost at least every couple of years to help them with energy and not clipping them too early. Let them go, let them be.
Alan, when we walked in here, I saw something that I've not ever seen before, in that I actually saw some of the bulb crops, like the tulips, used in a planter.
Right, they make great container plants for spring. Just remember that if you plant them in the fall, they must have that chill time, and they can't be outside. It's just too cold for their roots. Put them in like a cold garage or a root cellar, or even bury them deep with some leaves over the top, and then pull them up in the spring, and then you can insert them in any container you have, and they're just glorious.
Well, and I think sometimes we tend to get them as gifts, or get a pot as a gift for the holidays. So then you could even take that out and put it into your pot, and maybe even put some other spring flowering things around it.
Absolutely. You saw violas and kale and snapdragons and lobelias and the other cool season loving plants as great companions.
Besides the bulb crops, do you have spring ephemerals too?
We sure do. Our Dayton Wildflower Garden is one of the best displays of spring ephemerals around.
Alan, what are spring ephemerals? Can you please define what that means?
Spring ephemerals are plants that are native almost exclusively to woodlands, and they come up really early in spring, flower real early, set fruit, and then by the time the leaves are coming out on the trees, they're really declining and disappearing.
So then are they able to grow because the leaves are not on the trees and they get more sunshine?
Exactly. That's how they've evolved and adapted to fit that niche of, you know, the springtime warmth close against the ground.
Are they like the tulips that you have to plant them in the fall too?
It's really the best season to plant them then, or just as the foliage is yellowing on some of them is a good time to transplant them in your garden.
Do they go into a dormancy then all summer long during the heat?
Dormant all summer long, and don't return until the following spring.
I would bet that most of the time if people take and plant them in the spring, and then they'll just panic because they turn yellow and they think they've killed them.
And that's completely normal, but again, use them as companions with other more long-term perennials like ferns in a native woodland garden.
How much sun can they tolerate?
They actually, as you saw on the walk down here, some of them are in full sun beds because they're going dormant. I mean, you can put them in a garden in full sun, but because they go dormant in midsummer, other plants in that bed come up and fill the space. So shockingly, they can be put in full sun too, most of them.
Do you have to worry about watering them, or will they tend to rot if you keep on watering?
Right, you can rot them with too much summer irrigation, yes. Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you have a sprinkler system, that might not be the best thing to run.
Not the best for a lot of these bulbs and spring ephemerals, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they would be an ideal thing if you have a lake home and have a lot of trees and shade around.
Perfect for woodland gardens like that, yes.
Would you be willing to show us some of the spring ephemerals up close?
Absolutely, Mary. Well, Mary, we've got a really nice collection here. This beautiful yellow flower is the wood poppy, Stylophorum diphyllum. It is one that you can really extend the bloom season. It blooms in spring, but if we have moist conditions, continues to bloom for a long period of time.
Does it keep its foliage then?
Yes, it holds its foliage depending on the year. If we have a nice wet year, it holds its foliage pretty well into the season.
Here's one of my favorites.
Yeah, this is the large flowered Trillium, beloved especially in northern Minnesota where you get huge patches of this. Again, you know, blooming in mid-spring now here like today, and its foliage will also hold up pretty well, and then it gets a little red berry where that flower was. And I also got to mention that the flower on this starts out white but ages this beautiful pink, so you get two colors out of one plant. So if we came back in about 10 days, it would be pink. Companion plants, we can talk about a little bit about lady fern. This is a really nice companion to have with the Trillium and the wood poppy, because as they go down later in the season, this lady fern is going to come up and fill this space and look really nice until fall.
But these are hardy. You can leave these out. You don't have to dig them out.
Right, absolutely. You can see that this one plant is now spread into two blooming ones and has two little offsets right there.
Will the seed that it forms, the red berry, will that actually start a new seed too, or does it send out rhizomes?
It sends out rhizomes, but we also readily get seedlings in the garden as well.
What are some of the other things that are in here?
Well, right in front of you, the speckled leaf there is the trout lily, and we have 3 species in the garden. The white one, which is very common across Minnesota. We have a yellow flowering one, which is more infrequent, mostly in southeastern Minnesota. And then we have the federally endangered, only endemic plant to the state of Minnesota, the Minnesota dwarf trout lily here as well. It's found nowhere else. It's native in only 2 counties in Minnesota, so Rice and Goodhue, south here of the metro.
How did you end up having them here?
Well, the original forefathers of the garden, when they were putting together the collections, actually, before it was an endangered species, went out to the wilds and collected samples from all the populations. And actually now that's a very, very big conservation thing that they did, because we have, it's called ex situ conservation. You're conserving something off its native site, and we have all those original populations. If a big flood or some disaster happened to the wild ones, we would have the backup and we could actually put them back if we needed to. So it's part of we're part of the Center for Plant Conservation, and that's one of the species we're responsible for protecting.
Well, I love the foliage on these trout lilies. They've got such pretty mottled
yes, that beautiful
leaves.
Right, the little kind of burgundy mottling in that makes them really nice, but again, very soon those will start to turn yellow and be gone until next spring.
And when we came in, I saw Jack and the pulpits.
You
Those are
bet.
so fun too.
Yes, they are. They're also another species of corm. I'm looking around to see if I can see one that also holds its foliage pretty well on a moist year. Sometimes the foliage goes down, but the flower produces that beautiful red set of seeds that in the fall garden you may just see the beautiful red seeds and the leaves are gone. So I like that too for, you know, adding some beauty into the fall season.
Do you have a couple of my other favorites? One of them is Virginia bluebells.
We sure do. As you saw, there's a patch over beyond us there. Yeah, that's one of my absolute favorites, and that's also absolutely a true ephemeral. It comes up and by midsummer it's gone.
So that is one that you can plant with other plants, and then when that dies down, the other plants can come up and take over.
Yes, it's an ideal garden border plant as long as you have companions for it.
Now, tell me a little bit about ferns. I saw that you have these here.
Right.
What are fiddleheads?
Fiddleheads are the emerging leaves of these pinnately compound types of ferns, in other words, that have like a feather-like structure. The maidenhair fern, of course, has a different structure, and so that really doesn't have a fiddlehead. You know, has that nice little swirl and unfolds into these beautiful textured plants.
Is the fiddlehead just a common thing to describe that, or is that actually the name of a fern?
No, it's to describe the emerging leaf or frond of many species of ferns, again, that have this form of leaf.
They are not really a spring ephemeral because I've seen them look nice in the summertime till it gets hot.
That's right. And some species actually hold well all the way through the summer. It just depends. Some of the wood ferns, actually lady fern like this one, I think hold up really well through the whole season. And again, we like them in the garden, in a garden like this, so that they replace all the spring ephemerals.
I have a question. What annuals can I interplant in a perennial bed to attract pollinators?
Well, I put that into practice here in the lily beds. A lot of people grow lilies in their home gardens. They're wonderful. They're hardy here in Minnesota, many of them. But after they're done blooming, they bloom in July, basically, and after they're done blooming, the plants start to take a dive. Some of them will retain their leaves well into the fall and look pretty good, but a lot of them start to turn brown and yellow, lose their leaves. There's one that's like all brown, so we have to cut those back. So if I didn't interplant anything with these lilies, it would be just this empty bed. So lately I've taken to planting annuals to spruce up these lily beds after the lilies are done blooming. In this case, I have Ageratums growing here. They were rather dinky while the lilies were blooming, and then once the lilies stopped, they started putting on some growth, and now they've filled in with a nice lavender look. And there's some Love Lies bleeding there too. Similarly blooms now in the late summer and into fall. So this way I have some nice stuff blooming in what would otherwise be sort of empty beds. Another plant I really like to grow in the lily beds is Salvia, and there are many different species of Salvia, and they get pretty tall. They start blooming usually like in midsummer and well into fall, up till frost. And I really like them because they're pollinator attractors big time. They attract butterflies, bees, wasps, and hummingbirds love the Salvia. So it's great to have so many pollinators here late in the season, and people just love seeing the hummingbirds, and including myself.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
Now, Alan, you've talked about the spring ephemerals, and those are so beautiful. But sometimes people have lake homes or they've got a big area in their woods and they've taken out buckthorn or they've got an empty spot. What are some of the plants that they can use in order to fill out that area?
Right. Well, along this path here, we have some great examples of woodland ground covers that are native. Right here are wild geraniums as a good example. They self-sow, and also the rhizomes spread out over time to make really big drifts. And beyond that, we have another excellent one. That's the wild ginger. And you can see we've actually recently divided it to increase its cover area, and it spreads really almost a foot each year. And it's a little bit aggressive. Don't plant it right with some of your delicate ephemerals, but for a big bare spot, oh my gosh, it's ideal.
So if you plant something like the wild geranium or the wild ginger, how far should you space those plants apart if you want them to kind of grow continuously or touching down the road?
If they're just little plugs, I would just put them about a foot apart. And here you can see we've got bigger clumps that were divided, and so they're about 18 inches or 2 feet apart. So it's amazing, like I said, they can really spread a good bit in one season.
And these you don't have to dig out or worry about in the fall to do anything with?
Right. Under these moist conditions here in the spring is a good time to divide them up.
Oh, it is, rather than in the fall.
The fall will work too, is good, but as you can see, these were just recently divided.
If you divide them and plant them in the fall, do you have to do anything to protect them?
No, these are extremely hardy plants.
Okay.
Just obviously if it gets really dry, make sure that they're watered.
Okay, well, and I see a plant there that's really got a ferny foliage.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's my beloved Dutchman's breeches. When I was a young boy, my mom took me on a woodland wildflower walk. I was either 4 or 5, and I remember that plant, the little upside down white pants, it got me inspired to be interested in native plants and gardening for the rest of my life. So that's the plant that did it. Yep.
So that's the one that started it
That's
all.
the one that started it all. So it's beloved to me. And yeah, we didn't mention it. It's one of the neatest spring ephemerals. Yep.
So that's one that does die down.
It's gone. It's already declining and starting to turn yellow. It's one of the quickest ones.
A lot of these are woodland plants, and we talked about the spring ephemerals.
Mm-hmm.
But what about, are there things that you can plant that would give you color in the fall?
Right here we have Zig Zag Goldenrod, and that's one of the best for fall color. It has yellow flowers then, just really good for late season pollinators. And we have a lot of bees that are specialists on goldenrod, so it's a great one to include. And again, extending your season of color and interest in a woodland garden.
How tall does that get?
That one gets about 18 inches to 2 feet tall, so it's not a real rank grower like some of the ones out in fields and so on. It's much more refined. And behind it is another neat one we haven't talked about, the Virginia waterleaf, and it's kind of a late spring bloomer, and oh my gosh, it's one of the best plants for pollinators. We have areas where it really fills in. Actually, in some kind of rough lawn areas, it even does really well. And it's another one, again, some people think it's a little too aggressive for their delicate wildflowers, but that varies garden to garden, and obviously we use it extensively as a filler here.
And you had mentioned that there was actually even another aster that does well in the fall.
The blue wood aster, and it'll bloom at the same time with the zigzag goldenrod and makes a great combination because it has really soft blue flowers, sometimes white, but usually a very soft blue, sometimes a richer blue. Again in September, really good for those late season pollinators, and combines beautifully with the zigzag goldenrod and these other plants.
And what color does that native wild geranium bloom that we saw there? And you've got another clump up there.
It's a really rich, vibrant, pinkish lavender. I really love it. I mean, it really has a zing to it. And to me, it usually blooms around Memorial Day, a late spring, so it really extends the bloom time.
But it's got real pretty foliage.
And the foliage is gorgeous. Yep, it really is. And actually, if it holds, if we have a nice moist season, it can even have a pretty fall color too.
That's a great plant then, because it's great for the pollinators. Yep. It blooms and it has fall color.
You bet. That's a full season. Yep.
The trifecta.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you so much for showing us all of these spring bulbs and the spring ephemerals, and then also these beautiful ground covers.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you came out, and I hope your listeners and viewers will come out to the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum to get great ideas for their own property.
Funding for Prairie Yard and Garden is provided in part by Heartland Motor Company, providing service for over 30 years in the heart of truck country. Heartland Motor Company, we have your best interest at heart. Farmers Mutual Telephone Company and Federated Telephone Cooperative, proud to be powering Asira. Mark and Margaret Yakel Julien, in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org. Diamond Willow Advanced Care Assisted Living, providing custom homes with smaller settings designed especially for high care needs.